15 years ago, I built my first desktop computer. I went on a splurge. I spent all my money on computer equipment, and one of the things I bought was a very expensive keyboard, and it was a keyboard mouse combo, but the mouse was optical, and it was really flawed. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't, and it was finicky about what kind of surface it would work on. It wouldn't work on the surface I wanted it to, which is a couch, that one right there, or might have been a different couch back then, but similar. A fabric couch, and it just it sucked. The optical mouses were not really that good back then. So there was this new technology, laser mouse, and I decided, that's what I want to get. So I went and replaced the mouse that came with the really expensive keyboard, which was $150, and that was a crazy amount of money to pay for a keyboard back then, even now, but back then it was more so. I don't know, I just was wanted to go for it and get the best of the best. I drained all my money in the bank, and I wanted to get the best mouse as well, so I went and got this, what was really a high-end mouse, probably the most expensive back then, or one of the most expensive, $80, and it worked. That was the satisfying thing about it. Some features I required the mouse to have was to be wireless, because I don't think wired mouse is very practical, especially in this day and age where there's a large separation between the computer and where you sit, as you can see. So that was a requirement, so I can sit comfortably rather than the mouse dictating where I should sit based on the length of its wire. And my objective, of course, back then when I was building my desktop, was that I was gonna be able to sit wherever and however I want. I was gonna be able to use it comfortably, because as a programmer I had to be comfortable while using the computer and staying hours on end at the computer. So it was a dictum I required: wireless and rechargeable. Those were the two big necessities. And these two things, the keyboard and the mouse, I recognized were pivotal for me to using the computer comfortably. Plus, they determined how much command I was going to have of the computer, so I didn't hold back when getting them. And I got this mouse for $80. It's a laser mouse, but something was not right about it from the start. It didn't work like I ideally wanted on a couch, a fabric couch, and I had to find a surface for it. Ultimately, I settled on this plastic sheet, which is a cover for paper, piece of paper, and yeah, I used it like so, but it was still jiggery when I moved or I left it still. I noticed it jumping a bit, a pinch on the screen, and I figured maybe it was me on the couch shaking or my hand shaking, so I excused it. But I remember being informed that people adapt and they learn how to get used to flaws and work through them. And this mouse really taught me that a lesson in adaptation, because despite it shaking on the screen, I was still able to use it, and it had some imperfections, but I was still able to overlook those imperfections. And even though it didn't go where I wanted, even though it moved the cursor very slowly on the screen, which I was able to mitigate by the settings on Windows. So just a small movement would accelerate the cursor and make it go much farther than it would actually go by on its own. And yeah, so it was a big lesson for me in the concept of adaptation. People can adapt to really somewhat not perfectly working things. They can make use of them despite their imperfections. And yeah, people train themselves to use broken stuff. So another thing that wasn't quite satisfactory for me was that it's pretty large. Well, actually it was, I got used to that, and it became like a bed for my hand, and I started liking that aspect of it. I'm not a very big guy. I'm just 5'6", 120 pounds. Back then I was 100 pounds. And I'm a very honest person. This is my room. It's a big mess. here is the keyboard that I bought with it, and that's the desktop. On this channel I don't keep BS, or I should say I don't BS my viewers. This is who I am, and this mess is not what you will see on my other channels. So I reveal all on this channel. My room is a big mess and I'm a small person. My biggest resentment in life, but there's nothing I can do about my size. I have to live on. Back to the gateway for people into computers. This mouse has particular buttons, very nice features on the wheel. The wheel can be pressed, and surrounding it are up and down buttons which you can program to do anything. And then there is side buttons. There's again up and down, and a middle button. I found it difficult to find a useful function for these buttons. Eventually I settled for a double click, which was the wheel clicking the wheel would cause a double click, or this one, this middle button, would cause a double click, and the back button, this one would be the down button, and forward, or I'm mixing them up. I think the side buttons I would use for back and forth. I never used these buttons. They never came handy for scrolling or anything. And that's about it. So I would use them for back, forward, browser functions, and double click, and that's about it. I left 2 unused, and these ones I never got the top buttons. I never got the hand of using them. They're not really convenient to practical to use when you're using the mouse. This mouse, my people might adapt to the environment it's placed in, and so might every other electronic device. The current electricity going through it might condition electronic devices to function better over time and become more durable. I will remind you, this has been used for 15 years. It's just my theory that just like the bodies of people, electronics might develop a resilience to the environment around them. They might, and I apologize for sounding a bit cuckoo here, develop a kind of life. They have persistently pulses going through them in certain for years on end, it might have a transformative effect on them. I hate sounding like my mother, who views appliances like people. She's always thinking about when they should take a rest and their well-being. Sometimes she also calls them her sweethearts. I find her perspective small-minded and outlandish. She's totally technically ignorant about the technology. But now I'm thinking maybe she's not that far off. Just like people's innards develop resistance to wear and tear, so might electrical stuff. That's my hypothesis, but it might be even more deeper than that, much more mysterious. Like this mouse here, it's showing a charge despite not showing one 2 weeks ago, as if it knows it's gonna be disposed of and trying to make its last ditch effort to save itself. This is very weird that it has a charge. It shouldn't. I haven't used it in about 6 months, and the charge died before I decided to throw it, and at least 2 weeks ago. And the last 2 or week, the charge came back, and it's very unexplainable why it did come back. Again, mysterious happenings. I'm a very sentimental person, and I attribute a lot of importance to objects. That's why I hoard stuff, but I try to get rid of them as much as possible in time. So it pains me extra to get rid of this, knowing that there is a possibility it has developed into more than just a plain old mouse over time. The charge is still there. Amazing. This mouse is really old. It's got some growth, weird growth under it. I don't know what that is. And it wouldn't connect through the USB on my desktop. I had to use the adapter for the old connector. This is the receiver. They're both Logitech. The mouse and the keyboard mouse combo I bought expensively 15 years ago. That's why I place much confidence in the human interface devices of the Logitech company. They make good, durable products this 15 years and still going strong. But mind you, the mouse was not working properly for the last 2 years. When I would click push down up the right button, it would do a double click on the computer, and I couldn't drag anything because it would be a down press and an up press with each button press, and 9 out of 10 it didn't work properly. But again, a lesson in the power of humans adaptation. Even when something works 10% like it should, people can still adapt to make do with them. But the old optical mouse, no way, I couldn't stand that one. That was just too inconsistent. I settle for a dollar store mouse now. Like I said, I never had a proper mouse for 2 years. So the dollar store mouse is light years better than what I was using. And I learned all these buttons aren't really all that necessary, but I still look for them on my dollar store mouse sometimes. The dollar store mouse isn't rechargeable, but the batteries last a really long time because the mouse goes to sleep after a minute or so. I actually don't like the mouse technology all that much. Back then, 15 years ago, I wanted to use something better to interact with a computer. So I bought a tablet, not the tablet we know of today, but the tablets that formerly were known for drawing. Artists would use to draw pictures directly on the screen, and I wanted to use that as a form of a touch screen, so I can jump anywhere on this desktop. And but it was a flawed thinking, as you can imagine. You would have no way of knowing where you hit on the tablet as compared to where it would be on the screen. So I bought one of those tablets from a company in the US, and it was the cheapest brand available at that time. It came, and I soon discovered it had a malfunction. There was a line on the tablet where it would when you cross it, it would jump diagonally and upward. So it was kind of a flaw in the construction of the tablet. I contacted the manufacturers of the company, and they ultimately decided that it was incorrectly made, and it had a physical defect. I was impressed that a Taiwanese company took the time and to get an engineer to address my problem. They discovered that I had to send it back, but having been required to pay the shipping, I decided it wasn't really worth it. I also didn't want to return it to the store because the shipping would have cost as much as the tablet costed. Ever since that time, I try to avoid buying things from the US directly from companies because the return process is such a hassle. And now with the rip-off brokerage fees applied to things bought from the US, it's really unfortunate that the border between the Canada and the US isn't much more transparent. Anyway, I hope that mouse technology will become a thing of the past, and the Minority Report type of human interface device will be here sooner rather than later.